and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today I am incredibly excited to be joined by the absolutely remarkable Inga Beale. I'm sure you already know who Inga is, perhaps most famous for her CEO role at Lloyds of London and for her damehood. But I'm thrilled today to be speaking with her to find out a little bit more about her background and covering off some of those ever important issues that are still at the forefront when it comes to moving the dial with diversity and inclusion. Welcome to the show, Inga.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And for all of those who didn't have the opportunity perhaps to learn more about you and some of the things that you're doing at the moment, perhaps you could just give us an update, because I know that you wear lots and lots of different hats. You know, one minute you're speaking, the next minute you're running, perhaps one of your portfolio directorships. What's happening in your world?
Yes, well, it was a big year last year for me, 2019, because that was my first venture into the world of the non-executive, which means you get the chance to do things that you've perhaps never done before. And after 37 years of working in insurance, I thought, this is great, I can go and do some other stuff now. And so I'm slowly building up my portfolio of non-exec roles. I've got some advisory roles at the moment, mainly to do with technology, advising technology companies, either in the insurtech space or perhaps more broadly. I'm also doing some pro bono things. So I'm chairing an HIV commission at the moment, which is supporting the UK's ambition to eliminate HIV and AIDS by 2030. I'm doing some work for the Pitt Rivers Museum, which is a funny, quirky museum in Oxford University, full of oddities and amazing history of when explorers, and many female explorers, went around the world collecting artifacts. It's really quite incredible. And then I'm on the board of London First, which is a business membership association, talking about what are the issues for businesses in London and how can we improve the business environment. I'm also on the board of a law firm, Clyde Co. More and more law firms are getting independent board members these days, and so I'm joining them. And I'm still on the lookout for some other non-exec roles.
My goodness, it sounds like you've got a huge amount already on the plate, but definitely room, I guess, for some more there.
Well, yeah, and some of them will expire because, for instance, the HIV commission work is specifically to come up with an action plan in spring, that's our desire, and go to the government and say, this is what you need to do if you want to eliminate HIV. So that's got a finite end date. And so some of the other contracts I have also have finite end dates. So.
Brilliant. Well, it's great that you can kind of consider and pick and choose, which elements are going to not only continue to spark your passion, because you strike me as someone who just, wants to keep on learning and developing and growing, and, certainly is not about to kind of, sit back and, take it easy at all. Talk to me about some of the, some of the things that you found particularly interesting since you left Lloyds, because that must have been a huge change, kind of now going straight into plethora of businesses and working with lots and lots of different types of organizations.
Well, there's one thing that's absolutely constant, and that's people. Now, whether you are the CEO of a massive organization, global organization, whether you are involved in a very small startup business, it's nearly all about people. And I have, over the years, got absolutely passionate about helping people, developing people. And I have now, because I'm now able to get involved in other sectors beyond insurance and financial services, I'm realizing now that actually people are much more common than you think. The other day I was at a media bash. I was at an evening that was sponsored by a media company. And initially you go in and it feels a bit different from financial services. Everyone's dressed a bit more casually, the whole environment, a bit more colour and everything. And you walk in, but then when you start having the conversations, you think, wow, actually, these are people. And we're all pretty much the same. We've got similar topics that we're interested in. We've got similar issues we want to address. And it doesn't matter what sector you're in, you get people from all sorts of backgrounds, often with common issues and common concerns, sometimes obviously with very, very diverse views and diverse interests. But fundamentally, I can't really see that big a difference between some of the major topics, whether you're from financial services, whether you're from the media, the arts, healthcare, or whatever. And that's what I'm uncovering in this sort of next chapter of my life.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating, and I absolutely agree. I think, you know, the diversity of sector, and as we start to grow, you know, more holistically within the diversity, inclusion and belonging spectrum, there will be more moves across different sectors, and it's so beneficial as well. You know, I hope, you know, kind of long are the days where individuals kind of, you know, have to stay within their specific sector, because actually, you know, like you say, that, you know, lots of different organisations can benefit from, you know, the experiences that you've had, and there's so many different transferable skills across those various different industries.
And of course, as individuals, many of us want to continue to learn. Mm-hmm. And that's what keeps me motivated and interested in life, is learning about new stuff. And we all have a lot of capacity to learn and want to do different things. And that's why I'm enjoying this period, because I am now speaking to a professor of tropical medicine. Oh, wow. And learning quite in depth about all the work that he's been doing and researching. I'm also getting involved, I hope this year, to be joining a board of another charity in India, which is focused on eliminating TB in the world. And what is so interesting about that is then the overlap between technology and health. So they've been using tech to go into disadvantaged communities in many countries in the world, give safe space screening for TB and safe space treatment, because in some cultures there's a stigma attached to having TB, and particularly if you're a woman, you can be a woman in a rural village in India. If your family know you've got TB, you might be banished from your home. So these are serious issues, and they're using tech, which is really new, with treating a very, very old disease. And that has been eye-opening for me. And I think I will never, ever want to stop learning about different people and stretching myself to think, how much more can I ram into my brain? How much more can I contribute back? And that's why, you know, this thirst for life and learning isn't going to go away, or at least no time soon, I hope.
No, I can't imagine that would ever be the case with you, Inga. And I wonder if you don't mind, you know, and also for the benefit of those who are listening, you know, or tuning in today, whether we might be able to kind of go back to, you know, some of your earlier days and how you actually came to be where you are today. You know, the young Inga, when she was starting out on her career trajectory, did you envisage that you would end up being in the position that you are in right now, and, you know, being the CEO for Lloyds? You know, was that in the game plan?
Well, it wasn't in the game plan, but I'm going to go back beyond, way beyond, or before starting out in the workplace, because I was brought up in a dual nationality family. My mother was Norwegian, and my siblings, I had an older brother and a younger sister, so I was the middle child. They were born with the sort of traditional Scandinavian look of having white blonde hair, and I was born with dark hair. It's grey now, but it was dark, I assure you, then. And my brother and sister were sort of, they got together, they were very close, and they called me adopted because I didn't look like them. And so from a very early age, I started to feel, oh, I'm a bit outside, I'm not in the group. And I grew up, yes, feeling a bit different, but also what I think now, and I didn't realise it at the time, it gave me an independence that I think benefited me later on in life, that I didn't understand, because I used to just do a lot of things on my own. Mm-hmm. Then when I started work, I was working in the City of London, the financial centre of London, in the cluster of insurance companies. I was surrounded by men, particularly on the business side, that sort of front end, in those front end roles, it tended to be all male. So I was, again, very different. And at that time in the 80s, I wasn't particularly focused on my career. So I came to work, but actually I got big into sport. So for the first 10 years of my professional life, all I was doing was sport. I was rowing a lot, had to get down to practice, 6 days a week we were on the river rowing or doing some sort of fitness. Then I got into rugby. So again, I didn't start out ambitious about my career. In fact, I remember looking on at Lloyds of London, which is this centuries-old institution, probably the most famous insurance institution in the world, looking on as a young woman in the 80s, looking at this very, very male-dominated marketplace, thinking that's not the place for me. I'm never going to belong there. So never had any ambition to think I could progress. In fact, I left the insurance industry because I thought it's so chauvinistic, and I backpacked around the world for a year on my own. This was in about 1990. I said, no, can't work here anymore, got to leave, got to go and discover myself. And that's what I did. I met some amazing people. I traveled through India, through Thailand. I went to Taiwan, went to Australia, got inspired there by a woman who was actually a manager. And I was temping in the BBC's office in Sydney. And for me, coming from London at that time, seeing no female role models in senior positions, I was struck by the fact that the BBC had a female manager in the Sydney office. I thought, wow. But what was really striking for me, not so much that she was a woman, but that people respected her for being the manager. They didn't refer to her as sort of being a female. They just referred to her as the boss. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. She wore trousers to the office, and in those days, you couldn't go into Lloyds of London as a woman wearing trousers. You had to sort of conform to a certain dress code. And I just thought, wow, maybe you can actually go ahead in the world and be a female senior leader. And when I came back after a year, I did actually get offered my old job back in my old firm. My previous manager said, come back. And I said, okay, I'll give it a go. And sort of then I got one opportunity after another. Hence, I did 37 years in insurance.
Wow, and the rest is history, as they say.
But lots of help along the way.
And how did you feel when you came back? Because clearly, this was almost a light bulb moment for you. You come back from travelling, exploring, finding yourself, and realised, actually, hey, maybe things can be different. How did you feel when you kind of entered back into what was this, maybe, in your mindset, formerly kind of slightly more chauvinistic and very set a certain way?
Yeah, I think, and it was really about me changing. So in the 80s when I started out, I wanted to feel like I belonged in the gang. So I took on very male behaviours, and I wanted to be just one of the boys. When I went travelling and I saw so many different types of people, and particularly saw this strong female, I thought, I can actually be myself, and I'm going to come back and do it my way. I'm not going to conform too much to other people's expectations. Now, we all have a role to play in a work environment. We're at work. We obviously have to behave by certain codes and things like that. So I'm not talking about being a complete maverick and doing your own thing, but I decided that I was going to be much more me, and I was going to be true to my own values and beliefs. And if I did want to wear trousers to the office, or I did want to challenge a certain type of behaviour, that's what I was going to do. But I think, and by that I had confidence that I didn't have before, but I think the most important thing was actually changing to another employer who was very proactive in talent management. And they opened my eyes to how much an employer can influence the work environment and give people from different backgrounds, whether you belong to a different ethnic group, whether you're a certain gender, whether you're a certain age, whatever it is. I worked for an employer that proactively managed its talent, which means it plans as much around talent as it does around its business and its numbers, and is very keen to promote people from other backgrounds because they know you're already facing all sorts of biases and decision-making by people in power who are different to you. And that was a great opportunity to go and work. The company was GE. It was a great opportunity for me to go and work there.
Wonderful. And you mentioned there, that on your route to the top, so to speak, there was, a lot of help along the way. And I know, there's many, young women and men, as well, lots of individuals that look up to you and will have seen you as a role model. Who did you see as role models, and who helped you, get the steps up the ladder?
I don't think I had lots of role models, but I had two mentors that were very, very, very important to me. One was a female, she's now retired. She worked in the same company as I did, but she was in the headquarters based in the US. And I was in London, and I was offered promotion. At that point, it was the very, very first promotion. I'd been working for 12 years. I was going to be offered my manager's role to manage the team, and I was petrified, and I said no. Now, at that time, GE, I didn't know, but I was part of the must promote a woman category, because they set targets for their managers, and this was in the 90s. They set targets for their managers to promote women and people from ethnic minorities. And today people go, well, I don't want to be part of a quota. I say, go. I benefited big time from having targets way back then. My manager had to promote a woman. I was the chosen woman, and then I said no. So his bonus was going to be negatively impacted by me saying no. Again, I didn't know this at the time. But what they did was then the company, and he reached out to the company and said, help me. I want to get this woman. I know she's got potential and talent, but she's underconfident. How can I get her to have the confidence to take this role? This woman then arrived from the US. She spent time with me. She spoke to me. And she said, Inga, please, we have the confidence in you. We have the belief in you. Take this role. And she recounted her own similar experience. And I thought, there's something to this. And so the company surrounded me with support, gave me training and everything. And I felt confident enough, therefore, to take that promotion. And then she remained a mentor for many, many years. And any time I had a career decision to make or needed some advice, I went to her. I also had a male mentor who did not work in the company, who was a trusted confidant that I could speak to about anything that was troubling me at work. And again, he would give me his true and honest opinion, and I found it very helpful. So two mentors who were really, really important. I suppose the woman was almost, we talk about being now a sponsor and a sort of coach. In those days, we were sort of just talking about them as being mentors. It's got much more sophisticated now. I suppose she was much more really of a sponsor in terms of actually helping me with a specific career decision within the company that she was in. Mm-hmm. But very important people. Mm-hmm.
I can see how much of an impact that's made, and it's so interesting to hear that story, and I'm sure many who are listening in are thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, that resonates massively with me, because it's having someone just give you perhaps that pat on the back or reassurance to say, look, I believe in you and you can do it, and or I've done it, and such, and clearly you went on to achieve great things. Now, you mentioned there quotas, which I think is a really interesting subject, because I also, if I'm speaking in a boardroom and individuals may often say, oh, quotas, don't believe in quotas, don't believe in ticking the box, and so to speak. And I'll often say, well, even if you don't believe it, if it's ticking the box, it's still moving something in the right direction, and we'll have you as a believer perhaps later on. What are your thoughts around the quota piece? Because clearly the dial isn't moving as quickly as it could do, especially when it comes to gender diversity, just taking one element of diversity and inclusion. But what are your thoughts around that area? Because you've seen it from all angles, Inga.
And I guess you change with age and experience, because I think when I was a younger woman, I probably, would have reacted badly if I thought that I was being chosen for promotion because I was a woman. But when you get older, and this really hit me, I think, when I reached 47, and I looked around and I said, where are all the women who joined when I joined? Where are all the women? Where are all the women leaders? They've all gone. They've disappeared. I look around and I see no other female CEOs running major insurance companies in the world. I said, well, something's going wrong here. Something's not happening. And GE had a women's network, and I had the opportunity to talk to the group CEO of GE, who was attending one of our women's networks. And I said to him, why do you believe in this? Why are you sort of going out of your way to support women? He said, well, of course, for centuries, men have had it their own way. In fact, men have had 100% quotas. So we now are trying to redress the balance, and the only way we can do it quickly enough is actually to be proactive. And I've had quite interesting discussions with people who say, but we only hire or promote people on, meritocracy. So doesn't that in itself say something very sexist? So 50% or over 50% of the world's population are women, and you're saying you can't even agree to having 30% senior females? Doesn't that say that you're automatically assuming that women aren't as good as men? By that very statement that you only believe in meritocracy, you're dismissing or you're implying that we couldn't possibly promote women because they wouldn't be good enough. So I have such a sort of issue with people who push back at it. Absolutely. There are so many deep-rooted behaviours that go on, beliefs, societal pressure there. It's so much more challenging if you are not in the majority of decision makers to even get to be at the table of decision makers. We could talk for days and days about this topic. One thing for sure we've got to do, because we have got to a stage, I feel, and the Me Too campaign has been sort of amazing in a way, but also it's put a lot of people off the topic of diversity, and people roll their eyes. We've got to get people having a proper dialogue about it, to understand the viewpoint, to understand the experiences. A few years ago, we had the start of our Diversity and Inclusion Festival in Insurance. It's called Dive In. When we launched it in 2015, I had no idea what impact it would have. But we had our very first session, and it was focused on gender equality. And we got some very senior men to participate or to sit in the audience. And then one of the questions from one of the women to the panel at this event was, I don't understand about the pressure of drinking and socializing in the bar at events and things. She said, I don't want to do that, but it seems to be the only way that we can get on. And I want to get on without having to do that. And some months later, one of those senior men in that audience came back to me and he said, Inga, I didn't really know or understand about the issues that we're faced with. But he said, I was late night in a bar at a work function, and I was about to order yet another drink. And he said, I remembered that question from that woman, and I said, why are we continuing to behave like this? Why are we continuing to think it's the only way to get on in business? There has to be another way. Now, if it was just one question and it got one person to reconsider their behaviour in a semi-work environment to do something differently, we're making progress. Maybe we're not making progress fast enough, but we're making progress because we're having people listen who don't normally get engaged in those conversations or hear other people's points of view. And that's what this has to be about. And we can only do this together. We cannot do it alone. We can't do it in separate rooms, in separate groups. We've got to get together and understand other people's viewpoints.
I couldn't agree more. And what this woman was describing essentially was that feeling of not actually belonging, and I think is very much about bringing people on the journey and continuing to push and move that dial forward, because when you look at it holistically, diversity, inclusion and belonging affects every single individual on the planet. Diversity is a fact. We could be, diverse in a sea of, others who, who are similar. Everyone has a diversity and inclusion story, and I think everyone has or would recall a time in their life where they perhaps didn't feel that they did belong, and so it is highly, highly relevant.
And it's up to business leaders, I think, to be really aware of the difficulties or the challenge that we face around bringing this equality to the workplace and giving everybody the right to be heard, to be respected, to be valued, to be promoted, to get on. And we've got to learn about the things we can do. And the only way we can do that is by bringing people not like us to the table. We continue to make mistakes, however earnest we are about this topic. I remember at Lloyds, it was a very special time. We were creating a graphic around a wall, a huge graphic on the history of Lloyds, amazing history, over 3 centuries. I was very proud of the unveiling of this. And then one of the guys at work, he came up to me, he was from the black community, he was a black guy, and he said, "Inga, there's no mention of the slave trade on this graphic." And Lloyds, nothing to be proud of perhaps, but insured the slave trade because Lloyds insured the shipping sector. He said, "Are you hiding away from it? Are you not proud of it? You don't want to mention it?" He said, "I feel for my community that it should be on that graphic." And I thought, gosh, of course, it was a part of Lloyd's history. There was no conscious decision to exclude it, but because we didn't have anyone from his community represented on the group that put it together, it wasn't brought up in the first place. And that's why we have to get those diverse voices around the table, because I didn't think of it, my other white people who were working on it didn't think about it. The power of diversity, it means that we can make a better world for all because we consider everyone's point of view.
So Inga, I think that example illustrates perfectly what happens when there is not representation from different communities around the table. And I wondered, to that point, what message you might be able to impart on leaders or businesses that are tuning in today about how they can actually make some sustainable steps to move the dial in the right direction.
Well, as individuals, we all have a part to play in this. Nobody can shirk responsibility. Nobody. Doesn't matter whether you're from a minority or whether you're feeling you're not from a minority. We all have a responsibility, I believe, to make the world more equal. And it can start in the workplace and it can feed positively more broadly into society. As a leader, communicate, 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 and mean it. Communicate you are taking this seriously. Take some action. Have conversations. Importantly, show courage and determination. This is not an easy journey. There is no one solution. It takes many people to come to the table and create an environment, to change a culture, to build a culture that's truly inclusive. Put in place targets. Make sure your policies are all up to date. Make sure you've got flexible work environments. Making sure you're encouraging anybody to speak up. I still go around meeting people who are fearful about speaking up in a workplace to challenge something if they don't feel it's right. Encourage people to speak up, have really open, inclusive cultures at work, but never, ever, as an individual, give away your responsibility to someone else. We have to all do this together.
That's so powerful. And I think one of the pieces you said there about people being scared to speak up, that's such a valid point. I think people are almost worried that they may say or do the wrong thing or will be vilified for it. But what you're actually saying is, look, speak up, because we aren't all perfect and we aren't all going to get it right, but we are all human beings and we really need to pull together, because the repercussion if we don't is, obviously could be very, very negative indeed.
And everyone benefits. People sometimes feel, one group's being given some extra special treatment. I tell you, if we have a much more equal and balanced world, everybody benefits.
And just another couple of quick questions before we summarise for today. But I wondered, would there be any advice that you would give, perhaps to your younger self, actually, if you were going back to kind of now heed your own advice as the young Inga starting out on her career? And also, is there any advice that you would give to anyone who is tuning in today and perhaps struggling or finding it hard to make their way in the workplace, be it at an executive level or be it at an entry phase in their career?
For my younger self, it would definitely be believe in your own ability. That I wish someone had said that to me. I wish someone had sort of encased me in a sort of that belief much earlier. For people who are making their way through maybe early career or even mid-career or even late career, never forget the PIE model. P-I-E, very, very simple. P is for performance. You have to do a good job. Don't think you can just go through your professional life not learning, not delivering, not performing. You have to do the P, you have to do the performance. But the I is also important. I is for image. Just think about how you come across. And the only way you really know how you come across is to ask for feedback. Get feedback, open and honest feedback from others. And you as an individual, give open and honest feedback to others as well. Too often we are not open and honest enough. And I don't mean go and be critical and harmful and nasty. I mean give it in a constructive way. But please, for your own benefit, seek out that feedback. Understand how you come across. Your image matters. And then the E is the exposure. You cannot just keep your head down and think you're going to get that promotion or get noticed just by doing a good job. You have to work on your exposure. That means getting involved in networks. That means volunteering in initiatives outside of your immediate work environment, breaking down silos, asking managers and other influential people in your life to introduce you to others. Work on your own strategic networking. Don't go to an event full of people that you know and think you're going to benefit from it. Go to events that maybe seem scary. Seek out people you don't know. Make sure you always have a conversation with someone you don't know. Don't underestimate the influence that other people have on you. When you start going particularly more and more senior for roles, the people who are hiring you will always ask around in a sort of sector or a community, do you know this individual? Have you met her or him? If they meet people who've never met you, oh no, I don't know, that is already a negative against you. It's important to get out and enhance your network. And very often, you don't know, some conversation you might have had 3 years ago could influence someone's decision 3 years later. So P-I-E, PIE.
What a wonderful note to end things on. I've been scribbling down here manically with all of the different advice pieces and kind of glimmers and nuggets of wisdom there to be able to take away. But thank you ever so much, Inga. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I'm sure there's lots of people tuning in thinking and writing down PIE actually as well, thinking, right, I must do that, because they're real tangible pieces of advice actually that we can all go and implement today. There's no reason why we can't be doing some of this right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thank you very, very much. And just to do a quick summary, as I usually do at the end of our shows, hopefully you've had a fabulous time listening to the remarkable Inga today. Lots and lots of learning pieces there. I think we can all be taking away to implement within our day-to-day lives, or perhaps take back to our businesses. Some of the things that I've learned personally, and hopefully you have too, are the fact that we really need to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. We must take responsibility. We absolutely must put our heads above the parapet, because one silver bullet is not going to make a difference. Actually, this is a multifaceted issue, and in order to succeed and to make sure we do have those diverse voices around the table, we need to keep on pushing through outside of the comfort zone, networking, drawing from places of influence and interest. I think a couple of the other pieces that I learned from today, are certainly to make sure you kind of have the confidence, I think, and the resilience, and share stories with colleagues. There's been many times, and Inga's very kindly shared with us those challenges and times that it's been quite difficult to feel like you belong, and I'm sure many of us have felt that. So do remember, diversity and inclusion and belonging, it's absolutely relevant to everyone, and there's lots that we can do about it. My name's Leila Mackenzie-Dallas, and you're listening and tuning into the Dame Global Fireside Chat series. All the notes will be on at the end of today's session in the show notes section of our website, where you can visit www.dalglobal.org/podcast, and we'll look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.